for it to catch up. Yeah. All right. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So today we have my man Austin, right? And this individual has these strategies to where, most people is like, I can't wait till I get to six figures. Some people, they can't even comprehend what seven figures is in reality. And he made this quote that really resonates with anyone that's a business owner and entrepreneur. And he was saying that six figures, getting to that revenue level is not the same as getting to the seven figures. And that's part of the book, right? I mean, you want to be able to understand whatever you did to get to one, you're not going to be able to do the same thing to get to the other. So those that are listening know I like to give whoever I'm interviewing a particular nickname. And the nickname for this badass boss is going to be the double up boss, because he's all about the 2X factor. So the floor is yours, Austin. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what would you like to talk about today?
Oh man, we got so much to talk about. First of all, I love what you're up to. Love that you're talking about unleashing the next level of yourself and business. And we're going to go in a bunch of different directions. So, well, you know what? I recently came out with a new book called The 2-Week Vacation Test. So time freedom is one of the big things that everybody starts in business to achieve, right? But few actually get it. In fact, we work more hours and have more stress. So, and you're talking about from 6 to 7 figures, like one of the key factors is like you need time. You need that control of your time so that you can be spending it on the right things. So we can talk a lot about time to start, because I feel like a lot of people are overwhelmed and overworked and they're not working on the right things. So if we can get that focused and in control, that leads to more success in and out of business. And that's a big factor on your path to scale.
Yeah, so let's start unpacking some of that, right? I mean, obviously, you're talking about particular things that you should work on versus that you shouldn't work on. So I want you to kind of like unpack that a little bit. Like, everybody thinks if I'm working, I'm getting paid, then I'm doing the right things. But in reality, what are the right and wrong things?
Yeah. So every single business has different things that are high impact. Every single business has different things that are admin, and every single business has management and like different things in between, right? So the way that we break it up is into 4 key categories. So number one, tier 1 is all the admin stuff. This is a lot of the moving pieces in your business that can be done by an assistant or a low-level employee, right? There's so much of this, and this is the type of work that drowns us because there's so many small decisions that we need to make as a business owner, and as a result, we get decision fatigue, right? We ultimately get caught in a lot of those smaller pieces. So tier 1 is admin. Tier 2 is the technician type of work. This is doing the work. So for instance, if you have a marketing agency, it's doing the client work for your agency. Now at the beginning, you got to do all that. Like at the beginning, you're just trying to sell to whoever will buy your services, trying to figure out what your business actually is and who you're going to serve and how. But then over time, you need leverage, and you need leverage through other people. So the technician work goes from you doing it to having somebody else do it. That's tier 2. Tier 3 then is the management stuff. These are leading meetings, leading your team, doing some basic stuff from a more impactful standpoint, such as like even sales. And then there's tier 4, which is the executive stuff. This is working on the business. This is working on a strategy or a big marketing initiative or a JV partnerships or creating a book that's going to lead to a bunch of business or whatever, something that's really high impact. So if you break down all the pieces in your business of what needs to get done and categorize it into those 4 things, then what you want to do is offload at least 99%, if not 100%, if possible, of the admin stuff, and be able to focus and commit to more stuff on the executive level. And the way that you can do that, one of the ways that you can do that is start your day every single day with 2 hours of committed work on that tier 4 stuff, on those things that are going to move the needle forward, on those things that are going to set you up for 6 or 12 months from now. Because so many people are just focused on right now. I got bills to pay. I got a client that's unhappy, and they're just reactive right from the start. And they never work on the big things to get ahead, to build their business to machine, to fill their pipeline for the future, right? And they just stay on this hamster wheel. So we got to escape that. And you can do so by first understanding the time and the high impact, and then setting the structure to make sure that every single day you're working at least a couple hours on those high impact things.
So, I mean, part of your book, you was talking about the 80-20 rule, but there was a statement that goes with the 2 variations of 80-20, right? You were saying that you want to get the key elements right in the key order. So based upon what you said, like what is the exact order or sequence that something like that should be in to get from the 6 figures to 7 figures?
It starts so much with, first and foremost, the vision and the mindset, because for instance, you don't get into your car until you know where you're going. right? But so oftentimes we get lost in our business and we forget what the goals even are. We forget what success even is. So we need to go back to, and this is something that you can think about, listen to this right now. It's like, what do you want? Like, why are you working so hard for? Well, what's that ideal situation? How much money do you want to make that's going to make you really happy and live the lifestyle that you want? How many hours do you want to work? And that's going to make you really happy and live the lifestyle that you want, right? So we got to go back first and foremost to get clear on the vision, because like we can talk about, scaling from 6 figures to 7 figures, but like, do you really want that? Do you want those particular things? Or are you like, hey, really what I want is to make 20K a month and work 20 hours a week? Great. As soon as we have that clarity, now we can design the strategy and model to help make that happen. But if we just have this lack of clarity of I want more, which is what we so oftentimes get addicted to, right? Then we're just like on the hamster wheel, just hustling. We go years down the line and we're like, wait a minute. I started in business to achieve freedom and impact and this amazing lifestyle. But now my spouse is sick and tired of me promising that it's going to be different, because it's not. And I'm 2 years down the line, yada, yada, So we got to go first and foremost back to the vision and really get centered on what that success is. And then from there, I mentioned it was like the strategy and model. So chapter 2 of my book, From 6 to 7 Figures, is a must read for everybody, because that is the 80-20. That is the difference that makes the difference, because so many people are not really clear on who they serve and how they serve them. So many people are not or do not have a business model that's really actually scalable. It's just built around them and their time and their talent. And as a result, that's a job. That's not a real business, right? So it's never going to lead to the vision and goals that you have. So if we can go back to that and get a little bit more strategic and intentional about those particular elements of the right strategy and model, then you're going to get way more traction and make your life so much easier. But that's something that very few entrepreneurs actually do. And it's also, no coincidence that very few entrepreneurs reach 7 figures. 4% of entrepreneurs reach 7 figures, and strategy is a big reason why.
I think it's definitely enlightening to kind of hear the way you're phrasing it. And I want you to kind of talk about what you said, and I want you to unpeel this onion about knowing why you're doing and what you're doing. And the point I'm trying to make is that you made a dedication in that book to your nephews. You dedicated to them, saying that, okay, not only am I dedicating the book to you guys, whether you become entrepreneurs or not, but you made me realize what was important. So I want you to talk about, like, again, most dedications in books are usually associated to thank to my business coach or thanks to this person, but you dedicated to your nephews. I wanted you to talk about why that was so important to you.
Yeah, well, first of all, one of the things that we talk about is level 10 life. So that's what I think everybody should be thinking about, of what that success is, what that vision is, because a level 10 life includes some elements of money and some elements of business success and achievement, but it also, most importantly, includes those things outside of that: the relationships, the health, the family life, the love and different relationships that you want. And like, for me, it's so important. Something that's so important for me is my family. And I years ago moved across the country. I lived in California. All my family was across the East Coast: Atlanta near you, North Carolina, Kentucky, Ohio. So I was in California, and I was like, you know what? And I had 2 young nephews. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to not be around them. I'm not going to use this as a time to get separated from my family. So I committed to every single month, even though I lived across the country, flying and doing something with my family every single month. So every year now, since I did that, like whatever, 6, 7, 8 years ago, every year I have probably about 15 different, I call them epic experiences with my family, even though I live states and hours away from them. So I committed to that. And it sounds like a huge commitment. And it does, cost me whatever, $10,000, $15,000 in flights, but that's priceless. That's priceless. I get to see my nephews all the time. I'm a big part of their life. I'm one of their most favorite people. They're my favorite people, and I did all of that because I went back and really got clear on what's success for me. What's my level 10 life? What's important for me personally? Then what commitments and systems can I put in place to make sure that that is always filled up? And every single month I review the key areas of my life. Family is 90% of the time a 10 out of 10. And just because I'm clear on what I want, I put the systems in place and then I execute that. So I don't have to think about it. I'm like, wait, there's a family experience every single month. All right, what's the most fun thing that we can do that month? I'm doing that, right? Yes, it'll cost me $1,000, $1,500, whatever. Like, is priceless to have that, right? So I don't share that to brag. I share that to bring everybody back to what matters to you. get really clear on that of like, what's going to make you just happy when you're, in your rocking chair, 80 years old, you're looking back and you're like, I did this, right? Like that's the real stuff, not the, I want the Lamborghini and I want this and I want that, whatever. It's like that stuff doesn't matter.
Hmm. So, I mean, you brought up a key phrase about these epic experiences. So, I mean, obviously in your life, you've had multiple epic experiences, but there's a common theme, right? Obviously, travel is one of them, but
Mm.
there's usually a board under your feet. Like there's some variation of either a snowboard or a surfboard or a wakeboard. So I want you to kind of talk about like, how has that been a factor in your epic experiences with your nephews? Is that something that you were just born into, or something that you grew into?
Uh, I feel like I was born into that. Like I grew up playing sports. I played every single sport under the sun. I even played college football. If you see me now, I'm like 151 pounds, like the smallest guy. You're like, you didn't play college football. What are you doing? But I always had some type of sports. But for me, again, being active is not only so important for my mindset and energy and health, it's also something I love to do. So I'm doing as many things. So there's something called the love languages. I think everybody should understand what their own love languages are and what key people in their life's love languages are. My number one is quality time, which is really experiences. So anything that's active and new experiences and new adventures, like sign me up. I'm there, and a lot of times it includes boards, and board sports. So that's a little bit of that.
Pretty cool, man. So I want to talk about, everything you've been talking about. First of all, has been value, 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 value first. And you had a video that was talking about killing customer acquisition systems, right? So a killer system.
Mm.
And to summarize it, essentially you were saying value first. I want you to kind of identify, what does value first really mean in the scale of growing a business?
Well, the first thing is you really need to understand, who are you serving and who are you speaking to, and what is their big pain, right? So if you can put yourself in their specific situation, you say, this is their number one pain. This is what's on their heart and mind. This is what's holding them back from their goals and dreams and ambitions. No matter if you're selling tires or you're selling marketing services or whatever, we need to understand that. And then we address that. And if you address that, that's instantly value because you're addressing their pain, right? So that's a very simple thing that a lot of people don't necessarily really think strategically about. So for instance, one of the top pains is like, so many of the entrepreneurs that we work with, and we work with 67-figure business owners all across the globe, is like time. They're overwhelmed. They're pulled in 100 different directions. So we address that head on, and they're like, oh, wow, that gives me some clarity on what to do, what I've been doing wrong. You gave me a lot of value. I implemented 2 of your simple systems and like all of a sudden freed up time. And now it opens up the opportunity for the next thing and the next thing, but it has to be specific and clear. And their number one thing that they're have on their heart and mind, that then leads into strategically your offer. Because another one is, for instance, leads, right? Like we could very easily have something about leads. That's what's on so many people's mind, but that is something that we play against because we're trying to be differentiated. We talk a lot about the strategic order and things of like, leads basically isn't the solution in the way that we position it, partly from a differentiating factor, but it's really important to understand that and then lead into that and play into that, leading with as much value as you can. Because what you're really, especially for services, and a lot of you listening are probably some type of agency or coach or some type of business where you're giving some type of service. Like if you're giving that type of offer, most of the time what you're really doing is the implementation piece. So you can give everything out there from a content standpoint. Most people aren't going to do anything about it. What you're really selling is the implementation, accountability, support, and making it easier, right? And that's most service businesses. So don't be afraid of giving that value, but you got to understand your customer and address that pain head on.
I think it's definitely interesting, and kind of rewinding back the clock a little bit. Earlier on in this conversation, you had brought up the 4% of actual business owners that reach 1 million. So I want to kind of like slice that even smaller, right? I want to put you in that category of being featured in Inc. 5000, right? So I want you to kind of talk about like the nuances between these two. Like there's one achievement of reaching $1 million, but there's a whole nother level of achievement as reaching in the top 5,000, right? So I want you to talk about, what does that mean to you and how has that affected your business?
Yeah, it was always a goal of mine. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, I want to do that. And there's several other awards and things out there, but the Inc. 5000 and Inc. 500 was always, a goal and dream of mine. And the cool thing is as you said, so 4% reach seven figures, but to have the achieve the Inc. 5000, you need to be at least 2 million. And we've been fortunate to get that back-to-back years. And so you need to not only achieve a certain level of revenue and success, but it has to be one of the fastest growing companies, meaning you're growing over time. And to achieve that back-to-back, that's really something that I'm so proud about with our team, because that means not only, have we been able to give enough value out there, which then is represented in the revenue that we receive, but also we've done it consistently to grow over time with great service, with great systems, yada, yada, that we're able to achieve that back to back. And now we're going for a third year in a row. By focusing on, again, exactly what we talk about, is building things in such a way that it's done with operational excellence, so that when you get to one level, that's the new baseline, and then you can go up from there. But a lot of people are just focused on a big launch or a big strategy of some kind, and it may go up short term, but the next month the revenue's down. No, you want to build things consistently so that you consistently go up over time. I think that's a much more exciting factor. So again, I think achieving Inc. 5000 means you're fast growing, you're a multi-seven-figure business at least. Achieving it back to back means you can do that consistently, which that's the thing I'm most proud of.
So like, let's slim down these percentages even more, right? Then you also had an opportunity to do a live, interview on the New York Stock Exchange. So like what did that, because I mean, like we're talking about, there's always another level, right? And I would think that level probably oversees the 5,000. What did that make you kind of realize about your business at that point?
Well, man, that one stroked my ego. I'll tell you that, because growing up, I loved the Wall Street movies. Like I always saw myself in some way, shape, or form on Wall Street, and always loved the ambition and drive of those. And my first business actually was a day trading company. So I started a day trading company, got heavy into it, created my own algorithm, automated it, and built that up. And that was my first level of success and financial freedom. But I hated it. So I thought that in some way, shape, or form, I would always end up down the Wall Street or wealth management track, but I didn't want to do that. So ultimately I took 18 months off and traveled around the world, and then came back and I wanted to make some impact, and that led me to my other businesses. But always had that dream in the back of my mind of being on Wall Street. So then to go through the journey that I did, which was a totally different track with a marketing agency and then coaching entrepreneurs, and being able to go back and talk about time freedom, talk about business growth, like literally on the New York Stock Exchange floor. Again, that was like a childhood thing. And it just happened. Like I didn't even ignite it. I worked with a PR agency, and they were like, "Hey, we're getting you on all these different platforms, several in New York." And one of them was on the New York. I was like, "Yes, sign me up. I will be there." I was on the plane, and they were like, "Oh, you need this type of, instead of, a suit jacket and like your normal thing that you wear, like the business casual, you need a full suit." So I didn't have a full suit. So I had to go and get one like as soon as I landed, and like just as this kind of a chaos, but I was like, I'm in for all of it. But it was pretty cool.
So, I mean, I want you to kind of like time travel back, right? I mean, obviously like that was a point in your memory as something that you experienced that you always wanted to. What kind of kid were you? Were you the kid that was always hustling, or were you the kid that was just kind of like more so enjoying life, playing sports, and then money was like a secondary thing to you?
From the young age, I remember 8 years old, I was like, I'm going to be rich. And I hate to have that thought, because the reason why I had it is my parents fought about money. Like it was a stressor in our family growing up. Like we were fine. We were lower middle class. I got to do everything that I wanted to do. I didn't have to worry about too much necessarily, but my parents fought about money, and that created a lot of trauma for me, and I was like, all right, I'm going to be rich. At 8 years old, I made this, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be focusing on making sure that I get ahead financially, that I become a millionaire, that I become financially abundant, so that me and my partner, we never fight about money. Me and my family never has to worry about money. So money was on my mind every single day from a young age, all the way into probably about 27. And that was finally the first time where I was, completely out of debt, well ahead financially, had cash in the bank, had money coming in, passive income, yada, yada, that I felt really, really good and financially free. But like every single day it was on my mind. And again, I don't think kids should have to have that on their mind. So I had that on my mind. And at the same time, things weren't horrible, right? Like it was like pretty good. Like I was always enjoying school and working really hard there. I never felt really smart, but I was always going to outwork everybody, at least my mentality was that. And then playing a ton of sports and everything, I was worried about that. So I wasn't hustling from a money standpoint. I definitely didn't have the confidence or knowledge to go and be an entrepreneur. My vision at 18 years old, I thought I had it all figured out. I was like, I'm gonna go get my engineering degree because I was good at math and science. My dad was an engineer, so I thought it was a good base of knowledge. Engineer degree, get my or go get some sales experience, and then get my MBA. And that was going to be my trifecta that was going to take me up the corporate ladder. I never knew anything about entrepreneurship, and I started down that path and went and worked for a big oil company and loved it. But then I was like, I'm not jealous of any of those managers. So then I started to learn about entrepreneurship and went down a completely different path. But I didn't have the confidence or awareness to go after entrepreneurship until much later, into my mid-20s.
Wow. So, I mean, that kind of leads me to like talking about like a podcast episode that you were on. I think it was episode 8, and you were doing an interview with Perry. Right now, being that you've had your journey to kind of realize the difference between a business and a hustle, and that was a eureka moment for Perry. And you looked at him, and you said, "Look, dude, you don't have a business, you have a hustle." So, I want you to kind of talk about like how long did it take you to realize in your early days you may not have had a business, and when did your business convert from a hustle into a real business?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't very aware that it wasn't clear to me until I had to call 911. I was having anxiety attacks. I was in bed, and every time I would drift off to sleep, I would stop breathing. So I'd gasp up in bed for breath. And it was the worst feeling in the world. I thought I was going to die. I finally had my buddies call 911, and they came and checked me out and told me I was having an anxiety attack, told me to, not trying to be this tough guy doing this entrepreneurship thing, working 80, 100 hours a week, yada, yada. And I was like, all right, I'll listen to them. I went back to the hustle ways. A year later, same thing, anxiety attacks again, 911 again. And I was like, all right, something has to change here. Like I'm killing myself. I see people around me that are way more successful in business. They're way wealthier, and they ain't working 80, 100-hour weeks. There's got to be a better way. So finally, then I was like, all right, I'm going to go on the path to master and learn what does it take to build a crazy successful business and have a good lifestyle at the same time, right? Like it's really important that I have both, because I don't want to work 100-hour weeks. I don't want to, be in the software Silicon Valley game and try to, kill myself for a few years. No, that's not what I want. I want to be a balanced lifestyle. I'm traveling every single month. I'm living in the way that I want and doing so in a healthy way. How can I do both? And that's when I went back and learned. And now, as you said, we teach other people like Perry. Perry came in, and again, I told him, you don't have a business, you have a hustle. He listened, he implemented some things, and he 5x'd his business in 90 days by implementing a few strategies.
Wow. So, I mean, obviously with that, like again, like we're talking about all these different achievements that you've had, but there was definitely some rock skipping on to where you are right now. So I want you to kind of talk about these two opportunities that you've had. Like you had Epic Book Launch and Game Changers. And it seems like those were kind of formulaic to what you're doing right now, but you had to go through those variations to get there. So I want you to kind of talk about that journey. Why did you jump into books? Why, what was Game Changers, and how both of those different opportunities made you who you are today?
Absolutely. So after my travels, so I took 18 months off after my first business and went and traveled around the world. And then I came back. I wanted to make a contribution, make an impact, but I didn't know what that was. So I started a blog and podcast, just started to give value, started to talk to people. I had no idea which direction it would go. So I just started that and was getting some good feedback. And then I put together a lot of the lessons that I learned into a book, and I launched that book from a pretty small platform, and it kind of took off. And finally, a lot of people saw this. And by the time I got the 100th question of like, hey, how did you do that book launch thing, from basically not having much of any audience at all, I was like, oh, there's a business here. And this is probably going to be better than, me trying to stand out in the investing space. So I started a book marketing agency, and that was my first real business, as far as there's people, there's a bunch of clients, there's whatever. Cause like my first business was day trading. It was me and the machine. Right. And then I created an algorithm. So it didn't feel like a business. So this was my first real venture of needing systems and people and hiring and client management and cash flow and like all these different things that are real business. So that was a really cool experience. And then I didn't want to build an agency. And the algorithm with Amazon was changing a little bit and things. I was like, all right, I'm in this for the long run. I want to protect my brand. I want to protect my reputation. So I'm going to do something only that's getting like world-class results. So we had a client at the time that I was managing his marketing for Game Changers Academy. And he was a great influencer and I was great at the operations and marketing and things, that I was like, hey, we'll be a great team. You be the face of the company. I'm going to do everything else. We're going to make a lot of money and make a big impact together. And he was like, great, sign me up. And we did it. And it was awesome. And we had some really great programs. And that was my first level of teaching entrepreneurs. But then he wanted to be an Instagram influencer. I wanted to go change the world. So I gave him everything and let him continue to run that. And I went and started something new that I felt like was a needed thing in the space, which was one-on-one coaching that guarantees results, that works with 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs with a focus on operational excellence in the order of things. So that's the whole journey. Is like everything was a random stepping stone from one thing to the next. So no matter where you're at, know that you don't have to figure out like what you want to be when you grow up right away. Like go through a couple of different iterations and start to take advantage of the best opportunity in front of you. Cause like my first businesses were like mostly about 2 years each, 2-year stepping stone, maybe even less than that, that ultimately led to what I want to do for the rest of my life. So that's the whole journey there.
So I think your journey kind of plays into, I remember seeing a picture on Instagram and I thought it was a very cool picture. And I'm just going to read one part of that picture. It said, fire yourself. And the picture was a table completely filled with hats with CEOs on it. And you're saying like, that's the best damn gift you can kind of give yourself. So it sounds like not only were you practicing what you preach, but you actually fired yourself from that business and you started something else. So I want you to kind of talk about like that concept of those hats. How influential has that been to your target demographic in understanding that there are CEOs and they need to run a company versus them actually letting the company run them?
Yeah, well, when we start out, we're the CEO, we're the chief everything officer. But what we need to do over time is change to the chief executive officer, the big leader that's making the big decisions and working on the business, not in the business. So the hats analogy is like there's all the different things in your business that need to get done. You got marketing, you got sales, you got customer success, you got fulfillment, you got finance, you got all these different things, right? And as a small business owner, at the beginning, you're wearing all those hats. You're responsible for all of those particular things. But over time, if you want to have freedom, if you want to scale, you can't be wearing all those. So one by one, we need to be firing ourselves and getting really good at letting go, really good at leverage through systems and other people. And again, it doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen overnight. But if you can learn that skill set as an entrepreneur, like anything is possible. So over time, what we help our clients do is get removed from everything so that they're just in their zone of genius and in a true CEO role. They're fully removed from the day-to-day operations. So for instance, we've coached hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 6 and 7 figure business owners, and I do zero coaching. Now, at the beginning, I did all the coaching. Perry was our first client, actually. Guess what? I was doing the coaching. The first, 15 to 20 clients I was handling. And then I was creating our methodology and systems each step of the way. And then I removed myself and I was overseeing the coaches. And then I removed myself even further that now we've got a head coach that oversees the coaches. I don't oversee the coaches, right? So I do zero coaching and we've been able to achieve, again, some of the results that I shared earlier. So one by one, fire yourself, put somebody in place, set them up for success, teach them about systems so that they can take the knowledge and experience that you have and kind of follow that. And then they're going to, with a little bit of feedback and a little bit of work, they're going to make it even better. They're going to be better than you if you do it right. So, but you have to fire yourself, but it's so hard mentally to let go that's a big skill that we need to learn.
So I mean, I'm happy you brought that up. I mean, like you're staging, it's like fire yourself and replace yourself, become a real CEO, educate people on these different things. And I think to your point, that video I saw with Perry, you started off in that video kind of coaching and talking and telling his story, and then it flipped to where Perry became the educator. Like he was doing a video talking about education, talking about things that he's learned. So is that part of your strategy? I mean, are your clients then turning into some of your coaches that help you to grow your business?
Absolutely. Because what they're doing is they're learning so much. We call it an MBA in 90 days. It's like people get so much knowledge that they didn't realize before. And the cool thing is a lot of it's basics. A lot of it's really boring stuff, right? But we don't really believe that to our core until we actually go through it and we see it. And it's like, there's actually a better, simpler way if we just do these particular things. And then our goal is to have us not be needed. Like our goal is to teach everybody, here's exactly how to run a wildly successful, fast growing business so that they don't need us. I guess we're there for advisory. Yes, we're there for accountability, but really if we can teach them all the things that we know as well, then they can go off like Perry. Like the number of lives that Perry has impacted ever since leaving 2X, that's what makes us happy, right? Because we talk about the ripple effect. It's like, I feel like I was put on this earth to lead leaders. The entrepreneurs or the leaders that I chose to serve are entrepreneurs because of the impact. Like the impact that you make is unbelievable, right? So if I can better serve you, that means we're going to be able together to impact a lot more people. So that's a similar example there.
So, I mean, I think something that we haven't talked about yet, behind every entrepreneur, every business owner, there's usually I would say, a better counterpart. And you referenced with a picture of you and your lady, and you were saying that sometimes you feel like Jay-Z. Now, anyone that's familiar with Jay-Z, Jay-Z made this line about Beyonce is like, he's married or dating the baddest chick in the game. So I want you to kind of talk about Shadia for a minute. Like, how did that come to be? And obviously, she is just as influential as you are. So how does that dynamic work between both of y'all?
Yeah, well, first of all, I saw her on an app, and I was like, everybody's going to be messenger on this app. I ain't going to stand out. So I go back to, okay. Well, first of all, as soon as I saw her, I was like, I'm going to date her. She doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to date her. So that goes back to the mindset and the vision and the conviction of like, that's step one. What's step two that I said? You need the proper strategy and model set to scale. So what's the strategy of how I'm going to get to make that a reality? So it wasn't going to be, I was going to message her on an app. No, I went and messaged her, found her and messaged her on Facebook and no reply. She says I didn't send it, but there was no reply. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to Instagram. This is her main platform. I wasn't on Instagram much at the time, but I was like, I'm going to go there and message her there. So I messaged her there. She saw it. She replied. I worked on that for months and I was never on Instagram, but every single day I was posting stories on Instagram and I was checking to make sure that she was watching. All right. So every single day, so she was my audience. I call it audience of one. It's very similar in businesses. I get really, really clear on who your audience is and be speaking to that one person every single day. Right. So I was doing this and just working it and working it and working it. And finally, through a series of long events, finally got a date in person. And long story short, we lived together from day one, and it just started with clarity and conviction, and then strategy, and then just like consistent discipline and execution, going way further than I wanted to go, way further than what I was comfortable to even get that first in person. So that's the basic approach, which again is the same in business, man.
So I want to dive down that a little bit more, right? Because I mean, usually you hear like the bipolar opposites, right? Like negative and positive, and both individuals having like they're similar but they're different. And
Yeah.
you guys both are influencers. You both speak. You both are in front of camera. How does that work in that relationship since both of you are always particularly on and in the limelight?
Uh, we're very different and have supported each other a ton each step of the way. Because it's like, even though like we do stuff, like for instance, I'm going on the news again tomorrow morning. Like, even though we do some of that stuff, it's not really too consistent in such a way that it overlaps or hurts anything. But yeah, it's cool to be like one of my main factors is like somebody that's growth oriented, right? Is like, are we learning, growing, developing together? And that's definitely the case with having another entrepreneur. And there's definitely times where either I need to turn things off or she needs to turn things off or whatever so that we can connect better. But the main thing is to learn and get better and communicate really, really well and have that time and experiences and really understand each other. But the main thing is it comes back to making sure that the communication is really solid and that the visions are aligned with what success is. Because again, that achieves some things in business, but also a lot of things out of business that you got to set that time and make sure that that's a commitment.
Very cool and interesting at the same time as well. So this next question, I'm going to come off very facetious, right? And I'm going to state it intentionally like this, and you're going to know why here shortly. So we are talking about books now, and you can hear that my speech has slowed down drastically, and I'm pronouncing every syllable of every word very slowly. So I want you to talk about that horrible mistake that you made about thinking that everyone would play audio back at 4.5x or 2x speed.
So being when I was building my first business and I was still in the corporate world, every single moment I was in sales at the time, so I was driving around a decent amount. Every single moment I was in the car, I was listening to something. I was listening to a podcast, an audio book, and one of the guys that I listened to a ton was a guy named John Lee Dumas, and John speaks pretty slow. And I listened to things at 2 times speed. I was like, give me as much information as fast as humanly possible, yada, yada. And so I was like, oh, of course, like everybody does this. Everybody's 1.5, 2x or whatever. And John knows this, and he's really smart, and he's, built a successful following. He knows this. So he's just speaking a little bit slow and really articulating things. So then I start my first blog and podcast just as a passion project. And my first interviews, I'm speaking really slowly, like insane, like it sounds ridiculous. And it sounds like you listen to it. And come to find out, after like a month of doing this and like a dozens of episodes, people, like, nobody ever told me. I finally just went and listened to myself. I was like, wait, I sound ridiculous. And I was like, hey, you listen to podcasts at 1.5 or 2 times speed, right? And they're like, no, definitely not. Like, it's too hard to, be doing something else and be listening to it at a fast pace. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then finally I figured that like 80% of people don't listen to it at 1.5 or more speed at least, right? And I just sounded like an idiot for the first 12 episodes. So that was what I learned, but I was proud of that because I didn't wait for perfection. I was horrible, but I freaking started, And if you even hear me speak 10 years ago, like I was afraid to get in front of a room in corporate world. I was afraid of anything like that. And now, again, I'll go on the New York Stock Exchange floor and do an interview and not have to prep and not be worried at all, right? Just through reps and just through doing it. So I'm actually really proud of how bad I was because I started.
I mean, yeah. I mean, action first and obviously giving value. But I mean, to your point, I listen to everything I possibly can at 2x speed. To your point, just information come a lot faster and you can kind of do way more content in a shorter period of time. So I want you to kind of talk about like when you were listening to these books or listening to these podcasts at that speed. If for an entrepreneur that's listening to this podcast, what books do you recommend that they should listen to at least at 1x speed?
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many. So I would say one of the ones that was really impactful was MJ DeMarco's A Millionaire Fast Lane. So that was pretty cool. He's talking about leverage. He's talking about numbers. He's talking about some of the different things that I thought was different and better than a lot of other things out there. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The 4 Hour Work Week. Those are two staples for almost anybody. But the big things are, I think, really understanding some of the key business principles. So, I'm going to plug my book, for sure, is From 6 to 7 Figures. And it's very visual and like big text and like action oriented, and it's templates. It's like very much different than a lot of the books that are fluff out there. So that's some of the business principle stuff, but really it comes back to mindset. So if you can continue to work on the mindset and the confidence and the belief and the focus and so many things related to mindset, that is so huge. Because if you combine the mindset with some of the tactical stuff that I lay out, like you're going to be in a really, really, really good spot. But I also, again, like MJ DeMarco's book.
So, I mean, you brought up one of your books, and then your other new book that's I think coming out soon, if it's not out already, is the 2-week vacation, right?
Yep.
So I like when I was reading like the definition of that book, and to your point, you brought up the 4-hour work week. They almost like stick together like Legos. Like they're like sequentially. Was that intentionally designed like that for if somebody was to buy both these books and read them consecutively, they would get all the information that they would need from start to finish?
Yeah, they're definitely tied together in different or in some way, mostly because of the cover. The cover's somewhat similar, and we tried and we tested a bunch of different covers, and guess what? Every single time the winner was the one that it is now. It's just like winner. We kept trying to optimize. We tried different colors. We tried, green and like all kinds of things. Kept going back to this was the winner. So we're like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And then as far as the content is actually very different. So we're very much talking about team and operations and systems and numbers and ultimately 4, 6, and 7 figure business owners. Whereas the 4-hour work week is so good, but it's talking about VAs. It's talking about solo entrepreneurship. He basically created the game of being a solo entrepreneur, which is definitely not the audience that we serve. So, and the things is like ours or my book, the Tweak Vacation Test, is very practical as far as like the exact steps. Like there's 7 steps, and I wanted it to be that and be clear, not be this overarching holistic book, in such a way that the 4-hour work week is. And I love I highly recommend that book. It's just great. It's classic, changed my life in different ways. But I would say for people that read them back to back would see a lot of value out of each one separately, because they are quite different on the inside.
So, I mean, you're talking about giving value, and also we're talking to your avatar, which is a business owner or an entrepreneur that's, well into 6 figures, where they're trying to figure out how do they scale and grow past that, and also how do they spend less time in their business and more time, with the vacation, right? So I want you to kind of give some words of wisdom to that individual. Like, what can you tell them to kind of help them understand that there's light at the end of the tunnel?
I'll say the first thing, which is what you started with actually, which is what got you here to that first level of success will not get you there to that next level, right? So what you need to do is use this as an opportunity to go back to the drawing board, get recentered on what you really want, and then let's redesign what needs to happen. And that's the hardest part of scale, is we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to change some of the things that got us to that first level of success or that second level of success. You always are going to have to transform to get to the next level. So the cool thing is like, by understanding that, and if you think that you're going to be an entrepreneur a few years from now, then start to work towards that, start to shift, start to play the longer term game, because we put so much pressure on ourselves in the short term that it's really about the long-term game. And if we understand that, then again, we can start to take some of the pressure that we put on ourselves. And what that leads to is better decisions, better long-term success, because 6 months goes by in the blink of an eye, 2 years goes by pretty darn fast. So if we can start to take ourselves out of trying to achieve everything right now to that longer-term view and success, we're going to have more fun, and we're going to make better decisions, and we're going to lead to, again, a lot more success along the way. So those are a couple of things I would say is realize that you have to shift, realize that it's a long-term game, and start to play that long-term game, and you'll, again, make better decisions.
So, I mean, with that, talking about the long-term game and you essentially helping them through that journey, if they want to work with you, where would you like to send them? How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, go to 2x.co. We've got a great assessment there that kind of breaks down the key areas of your business and what the gaps and opportunities are and where to focus, because that's the big thing, is like, there's so many moving pieces in a business that, like, one of the best things you can know is like exactly where to focus, right? So we've got a free assessment there. I've got 2 books that I'd highly recommend, each one, From 6 to 7 Figures and the Tweak Vacation Test. Those are both available at my site as well. But our brand is easy. It's called 2x, and our website is even easier. It's 2x.co, 2x.co. There's tons of resources there. Again, whether you're trying to get from 6 to 7 figures, whether you're trying to get to the multiple 6 figures first, whether you're trying to get more time freedom, if you want ultimate success and what we're talking about both in and out of business, I can't tell you I know everything, but I'll share with you everything that I've learned. And, we've made a big impact by helping people do some of the strategies that we talked about. So we'd love to do that, and we'd love to share some of those. Again, it's 2x.co.
So I think that's definitely fascinating, and it kind of brings me, because I love brands. Like, brands is what makes my heart beat. So the fact that you have a brand that's just essentially 2 characters is one of those things that's like golden when it comes to branding, because it's so easy, right? You cannot fuck it up no matter what you do. So I want you to kind of talk about the process and why did you select, besides the obvious, why did you go with 2x?
The Grant Cardone's out there talking about 10x, right? 10x, 10x, 10x. He's getting people fired up and motivated and getting them, running through walls. And he's great at it. He is awesome at motivation. But the thing is like, nobody's 10xing. Like, like 10x is a dream. It's a way of thinking. But what we need to bring it back to is, what are we going to actually do? What are we going to actually execute? So we're 2x because we're always looking at, hey, where are you at? Let's say you're at 10K a month right now. Great. Let's focus on how do we get to 20K a month and get there consistently, right? So that once we get there, that's the new baseline. And then we go to 40K a month. And then from there, 80K a month. And then from there, 100, just one level at a time. So we're always focused on, yes, we want to think big. Yes, we want to dream big, but we want to bring it back to, what are we actually going to do? So as he's hyping people up about 10X, we're over here executing, and people are doubling and then doubling and then doubling again. If they do that, then they're blowing past everybody with these big wishes and dreams. So it's very much an execution focused mentality and approach that we take to business. And that ties into, again, the brand 2X. Combine that with One of our principles is keep it simple, all right? And 2X, as you mentioned, as simple as it can get. So everything ties around that. And even the domain, we want to keep it simple, right? So those are a couple reasons why. Is it simple, it's clear, and everything ties around it from our methodology.
Mm-hmm. So I think that that's definitely fascinating. I mean, obviously you had brand awareness, before your brand even came to existence, which most people, they don't have that executable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I want you to kind of talk about, with the 2X factor, is essentially saving time. It's being able to grow cash flow. It's leveraging assets and leveraging individuals. What tools or software do you use to kind of help people understand that they can systematize things, that if you didn't have access to this platform, you would not be able to do what you're doing right now?
Yeah, some of the main ones from an online standpoint are everybody needs some type of CRM, some type of way to manage all your leads and contacts. So, for instance, emails and phone numbers, we use ActiveCampaign for that. We used to use Infusionsoft. Both are great, but it's basically any type of way that we can consistently contact our audience. We can see what actions they're taking and then follow up with them if they're taking certain actions that show that they're interested in our program of some kind. So a good CRM and good management of that, good email communication, good text communication, good monitoring of your email list and text is really important. So that's one. Another is a basic project management tool. So we use ClickUp and we love ClickUp. We used to use Asana and enjoyed that as well. But this way you can have systems and playbooks and tasks for particular things. So for instance, we host these in-person mastermind events, which are with about 30 to 40 entrepreneurs 3 or 4 times per year. And when we do one, we've got everything templated out, all the actions, we've got all the documents, everything that we need. So I spend minimal amount of time and we can put on a life-changing 2.5-day event because it's all just in a playbook, right? So we can duplicate that over and over and all the tasks are there that our team can basically do all the setup. I just show up and try to crush it, So having some type of project management system like that. And then related to that is we have a bunch of spreadsheets and Google documents and everything in Google Drive that just, it allows us, we have a virtual team all over the world and it allows everybody to be able to access certain things there. So those I would say are 3 of the big ones that allows us to have the proper sales and marketing that we can have, the proper management of tasks and repeatability there, along with a lot of the systems, templates, and communication that we need from a Google Doc standpoint. Then combine that with our meeting cadence and Slack that we use from a community standpoint and internal communications. That brings it all together in a pretty simple way.
Wow. Wow. So kind of that kind of leads me down a path to where you've had so many different levels of achievement. There's just the way you spit it out, those particular software packages. You can tell that you were in the ground at one time using them. You understand those platforms. And obviously now you probably have other people that do that for you. And as far as achievements that you've accomplished in your life, which one is the most significant one to you today?
The number one is actually what we talked about earlier, which is not related to business at all. It's the family life and experiences that I have. That fires me up. That makes me, bring me out to almost tears because some of the decisions and commitments that I made to that, again, big deal from a financial standpoint, big deal from a time standpoint. But that is something that I'll always look back at and be proud of, the relationships that I have with my family, the experiences that we've created. And that is above and beyond everything. The second one that I'm most proud of is the team that I've built. So by having a good vision, by learning some things on the business front, I've been able to communicate and share that vision in such a way that we've attracted a world-class team around me. And that's something I'm really, really proud of as well. So again, if you do it right, you do have the big vision and mission, get some other people to help and support you. And if you do it right, you can get some world-class people. And I've been really blessed to get some amazing people. So those 2 stand out, man.
I think it's phenomenal. I mean, obviously, like you can tell that you're a hell of a leader, right? I mean, you're leading from the front lines. So if you had an opportunity, right, to spend 24 hours with anyone that you would envision to help you or to coach you, and it could be someone that's dead, someone that's alive, someone that you've never met before, but you have a 24-hour window with this person, who would it be and why?
John D. Rockefeller. He built an absolute empire. He had, a lot of maybe negative things in the way that he did that, but the way that he thought was really, really good combination of huge thinking with very, very, very strategic and intentional with the operational excellence. Very few people can combine those couple things, and he did it. And as a result, by far the most successful and by far the wealthiest person ever. Like his numbers would, like, if you made it the equivalent of today's dollars, would like Trump, Buffett, and Bezos and somebody else all combined, like some crazy stuff, just by doing that. But again, think really big, think really strategically, and think with operational excellence. That's pretty special to be able to do. The cool thing is like we can learn from that as business owners, because like we need to do each one of those three pretty well. So I try to emulate that as best I can, but got a long way to go to catch up with good old Rockefeller.
Yeah. I mean, he's a hell of a guy. I mean, I think he was one of the people that made the statement about making using and leveraging 100 people's efforts versus the efforts of an individual person, which
Exactly. Yeah.
that's how you leverage business at scale at any level, right?
Yep.
So going into closing, man, you're a fellow podcaster, and I like to give whoever's on my show opportunity to become the host of Boss Uncaged podcast. So now my show is yours. I'm your guest. Do you have any questions for me?
I do. What did I share here today that you think you want to triple down on based on the experience that you've had that would be really pivotal? Because like I want people to leave here with like something they're going to do, right? Like something that they're going to do about it. So if I talked about it and it really resonates and speaks with you, what's that thing so that people can go thinking about, hey, what are they going to do for that particular thing to take their life and business to the next level? What stands out?
I would think the key thing, right? I mean, obviously, I already gave you a nickname, but the key thing that walks away from this particular episode is taking action and then figuring it out on that journey. And everything that you said, it was like, okay, you just jumped in, you just did it, and then you figured it out. You ironed out the wrinkles afterwards. And I think that's the fastest and most collective way to grow, because again, you're not being held back by the fear of, I'm not sure what's the outcome going to be. Why think about it when you can actually see what happens?
I love that. Yeah. Action brings clarity, right? Like so oftentimes we're in our head, we're trying to figure it out. No, let's go and just like go through that door, take steps A and B. And guess what? Steps C, D, E start to show up, right? But if we don't, then it doesn't become a reality.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if I didn't decide to become a podcaster. And then as I became a podcaster, it was like, well, I need systems for this. Those systems wouldn't even come into play because I never would have been a podcaster. It's like the steps. It's like a 12-step program. Like literally, if you want to get to the road to recovery, you have to take the first step.
Absolutely. And one more question. I'm going to cheat. I don't know if I'm supposed to do this, but one more question. What's one role that you've hired over the past 2-3 years that has been just really monumentally impactful for you personally?
I would say a project manager, like that in itself, because usually 9 out of 10 times as an entrepreneur, we have ideas and concepts that we come up with. And I do this every single day. I'm like, okay, we need to do this. We need to do this. And then I throw that all up and I'm just like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Could we fit it in the equation? Do we have anyone that's enough staff that can do it? And then that person figures it out. I don't even think about who figures it out. They figure it out for me.
Right. You can't do everything, but having a great operator, right-hand person, some type of project manager or operations manager, huge. So I love that.
Yep. Well, I think we're at time. I definitely appreciate what you brought to the table today. I think like your level of energy, your insight, and just getting to the level of achievement that you have is definitely a phenomenal task. And if you can do it, then why can't someone else do it, right? So I definitely appreciate you here today.
I appreciate it. I love what you're doing. Love the impact. And again, I want everybody to take action. Take action. Just go, move through that next door, something you're afraid of, lean in, and the clarity will come.